Can struggling second and third grade learning disabled students improve reading skills through systematic and explicit instruction of phonemic awareness through the use of manipulatives? This was my question. The research article which I referenced to was Hands-on Kinesthetic Activities and Hands-on Activities for Teaching Phonological Awareness. This studied the effectiveness of kinesthetic activities and manipulatives in teaching phonological awareness of struggling first and second and third grade readers. They created two groups. The first group was a visual and kinesthetic group. In this group, they did whole or small group instruction. They did songs, phonic card games, word games, and rhyming. They had bingo concentration games, stepping stones, and which worked on our control word and spelling patterns and writing station 1 day per week. The other group in which they studied was hands-on activities. They focused on a daily skill. Individually or small group, they had 40 box activities. These activities were around phonics, phonological awareness, and reading. They had movable alphabet, manipulative objects, which the students would match words they built to the objects, as well as a writing station per week. They built both these programs around students' needs to socialize, play, and games, as well as using repetition practice. They compared this to a control group, very much like the many traditional pull-out programs which schools have today, where students are pulled out during the day to work with a teacher one-on-one on their reading skills for 15 to 20 minutes per day. So the study results. According to the study, the two experimental groups made similar improvements and larger gains than a control group, indicating that materials are effective for teaching phonological awareness to at-risk students in failing. As you can see by the chart, the kinesthetic activity group had an 18.9 gain. The object box, or the hands-on box, as I mentioned earlier, had an 18.0 gain. However, the control group only had 8.2. This is significant, which shows that these types of activities are effective in teaching at-risk students that are failing. In my own classroom, my classroom is similar to a self-contained behavior classroom. I actually work at a hospital program for students who are struggling at school. My class is run like a split block language arts class. Today I have 5 students. My students are a male second grader with ADHD, ODD. He is not classified. A male second grade student, learning disabled, anxiety disorder, ODD. He is classified. A male second grade student, learning disabled, ADHD, ODD. He is also classified. A male third grade student with learning disabled, communication disorder, and Asperger's. He is classified as well. And a female third grader who is not classified but is struggling at school. She has a learning disabled and anxiety disorder. The learning disabled, according to her mother, is that she has dyslexia. However, she has not yet been classified. My objective. Each day I write my objectives on the board. Today's objective is to develop phonemic awareness skills for students to use letter sound knowledge to create, read, and decode words. My do now, that's my opening activity for the lesson. How many words can you make from the letters A, D, H, D, T, L, and E? Summary. Name at least one word you learned today. My daily routine. Each day we have a daily routine. Review classroom behavior. This is student-centered, since behavior is a major point in my classroom. And then we work on we play our opening game activity. Today we're playing, which is the ABC and consonant blending activities. If you look at the cards here, my students are asked to choose a card from, I actually begin the game, and I choose a card from the bag, and the students need to identify the letter and the sound it makes in a word that starts or ends in the letter. And the first student to do this correctly comes up and waits to be teacher, and then the other students give me a word also that begins or ends with this letter or letters. This game continues until all students have gone. Then we do a teacher-modeled poetry reading. Today's poetry reading, Pet Trees by Jeffrey Landis. I read this first, and then my students follow me by chorally reading along with me. We review the earlier instructional plan, and then we work on our do now. How many words can you make? Once this is finished, we begin today's activity. Today, we are going to play a game, connect a word game, very similar to our do now. Students are divided into two groups, second and third grade. It's going to be second graders versus the third graders. There are 12 letters charted on my board. Groups have 5 minutes to create as many words as they can together. Each group chooses a leader to give words and identify the words as short or long vowels. I chart the words on the board. 1 point is given for each letter in a word. As you can see from my chart, initially my students struggled some with this concept. They were making 2- and 3-letter words. They struggled with getting past this. Some students even wrote Pokemon names, or I should say their version of Pokemon names, not even using the letters which were given. Once we reviewed the chart, we reviewed how we could build bigger words, such as long vowel words, using the strategies we had learned previously, using the letters such as the silent E or bringing 2 vowels together. Students began to really get engaged in the game. The second round, word listing increased. By the third round, the word lists were getting very long. Students were working together frantically trying to get the most words for their team. All students were engaged. I even had a student write the word muskrat, which shows that they were definitely thinking, and you could see that the wheels were turning. After we had game choice. Both games my students had been familiar with since we had played them as a group at one time. The first was Wingo, Blends and Diagraphs. It was a cross between dominoes and bingo. Students spun a colored spinner. They chose a corresponding colored words. As you can see from the diagram, the cards had letters such as ST or UMP or IC, and based on the domino the student chose, they could create a new word. If they cannot make a word, the domino is placed back in the pile. Next student goes. First student who creates 4 words in a row on the card is the winner. Scrabble Slam, another popular game with the students. The card game with a different letter on front and back of a card. 4 letters word is made and placed on the table and begins the game. On each side, each student is given 5 cards. On each card, there's a letter on the front and the back. If a word can be made, they read the word to the group. The next person goes. If a word cannot be made, they pick up another card from the pile. Next person goes. First person to use all their cards wins. The end of the period. Student choice. 15 minutes of silent reading, poetry, or writing. Today, my students chose to silently read as well as worked on their poetry reading. No one chose to write. They read the book of choice. My second grader chose Fox in Socks. Another second grader chose Cat in the Hat Comes Back. And then my third grade female chose The Wild Thornberries to read. Poetry reading. They read the earlier poem to themselves. They highlighted short vowel words yellow, highlighted long vowel words color of choice. My second grader and my third grade male chose to do. My third grade male actually finished a little early, so when he was finished, he chose to read Down by the Bay, Ralphie's Songs to Read. All the students were engaged. All the students were smiling as they read, and this is significant since many of these students are known to fight around their schoolwork. So how do I know? As I said, poetry reading. Most of my students read chorally, inflecting words as I inflected specific words or phrases. My Asperger's students struggled in reading to participate. See, it's oppositional to oral reading. However, with support and explaining we are all learners, we're all trying to learn to read together, he complied. I also told him that if I wasn't able to get him to read as the group, he and I would have to read later together, and he chose to read with the group, so I was happy with that. Our Connect a Word game, students work collaboratively, and with each round, students began to associate words with word families. There were letter sounds as well as recognized spelling patterns in short and long vowel words as we did the chart, and students worked together and helped each other. The game choice. Students willingly participated in the games and helped each other again to sound out words. When they're unsure if they made a real word, they asked for help. They even had me look up words to see on my computer to see if they were real words. Student book choice. Students actively read, as I had said, and they asked for help when they had to sound out unfamiliar words. Students were smiling, laughing as they read. Everyone was happy. Everyone talked about their books afterwards when we were getting ready to leave. Poetry. Students who chose the poetry and they chose not to read, they used my highlighters to identify short and long vowels in a poem. They stopped and asked for help and to clarify spelling strategies discussed earlier that day. All students were very cooperative, which was to me was a great thing. In my summary activity before my students left, as they walked out the door, they all had to give me words they learned today. They gave me words such as chalk, slate, engineering, rumbling, all words in which they had worked with that day. I had minimal behavior issues, which is significant. The majority of my students, as I said, are known to have behavior issues when work is involved. However, to them, this was not work, and I even had students asking me about the poem. Can we do the poem again tomorrow? Since they really enjoyed that. Or can we play the game again? So, what were my resources? As I said, the research study, hands-on kinesthetic activities for teaching phonological awareness. The link to that is here. Material research for the study. They use experimental print activities for language and thinking skills, hands-on materials for teaching phonological awareness phonics, words cut out from familiar products, and small toys. Materials which I used in my classroom. I use a printable alphabet and blend cards found at these links. I use poems for big kids, which is a large collection of poetry, which my students seem to be loved since I have continued to do this. The games I used, which can be bought at any store, Wingo, blends and digraphs, which also comes in short vowels and long vowels, and I believe some other phonics skills, and Scrabble Slam, which is another great game for the kids.